Alright, hello, good evening everybody. Hello, welcome, good to see you everyone. Got another exciting stream here today. Of course, going to be showing off a lot of Illuvium as per usual, but a little bit to talk about as well. Not strictly just Illuvium, but a little bit in the college esports space as well. Of course, for those who may know me specifically from Illuvium, of course, before getting into Illuvium, before I started streaming here as Silent, I was, of course, heavily involved in the collegiate esports space as an esports broadcaster. So I do keep up on the tabs and I do report on things as I see it. Usually it's pretty quiet because, let's be honest, most of the time collegiate esports doesn't really have much going on in terms of like actually exciting news. But there's a little bit to talk about, so I want to slightly touch on it before we get into our Illuvium stuff here. First off, also a big thank you to the Illuvium community once again for all the love, especially on social media, on Twitter. Everybody's reposting and putting the stream up on there, and I absolutely love to see it, so thank you. In fact, I might end up actually leaving the collegiate esports stuff later. I'll close out with it instead. Can get my thoughts out then, but I'm pretty certain everybody's here for the Illuvium stuff, so let's hop into that. Of course, game plan here for today. So I'm going to be doing a tier list of the Illuvials themselves in Illuvium. So of course, all the creatures that you can capture and put onto the battlefield. I'm going to do my very best to go over them all, kind of explain what they do ever so slightly, and then say where I think they should be in terms of a tier list. Are they the strong ones? Are they useless? Where would they sit? And that is going to be my goal here for today. Of course, also do want to give the heads up to everybody that I know this Illuvium Pro League, they have their season opener, or their first tournament rather, this Saturday, or technically it starts on Friday. They have the qualifier on Friday for the sit and go portion. But they have that going into Saturday. I will not be available, unfortunately, for that tournament, as I do have a wedding to go to. Known about the wedding for a good couple of months now. As much and as cool as the Illuvium Pro League is, I am not going to draw a wedge with my family to skip that in such a last moment's notice. So not to be a shot at the Illuvium community by any means, trust me. I'll hop on the next week and start trying to do as much coverage after the fact for week 2 and onward. But for week 1, unfortunately, I will have to miss out, but I will be keeping tabs on things. Maybe when I get back on one of these days, I can do a bit of a recap show of sorts. In terms of where it'll be streamed, I have not seen anything in regards to a stream link. So if anybody happens to figure it out, by all means, please do let me know, and I'll make sure to retweet it and share it out. Okay. Just making sure I got a couple final things in order here. Okay. Let's turn down the music ever so slightly one more time. I guess it's actually kind of quiet. Let's just leave it at that. Okay, 4 Illuvials here for today. Okay, there we go. Alright, so again, anyone who's been around streaming or been around YouTube long enough probably knows what this is, but for those who may not be aware, the idea for this tier list here, turn this down a little bit more. The idea here, of course, is all of the Illuvials that I end up putting at the very, very top are the best of the best. Your S tiers. Pretty much everybody has a problem with these Illuvials or absolutely love to use these 100% without question. A tier, I mean, they're still good in what they need to do, and maybe do shine a little bit, especially if they get the kind of right items, but they're not maybe as high class as, say, the S tiers. B, very, very similar situation where they're good at what they do that, but not that much more. C, I mean, they're okay if your composition's kind of going for that style or for that affinity, but otherwise there are better things for it. D, they genuinely unperform and you're probably not going to keep them on your team or want them on your team. And then F is my dedicated trash tier, where they're just awful and you should avoid them if you can. Now, of course, this is just my personal take. By no means am I a top player. Am I some sort of competitive legend? No, not in the slightest. If anything, I'm probably rather mid. But I have been playing for a while, and I will very briefly, as best as possible, go over what I think these I've personally had a problem with, what I think is really, really strong right now. And this might be something that we have to come back with sometime down the road and update. But we'll see, and I'll try to give every Illuvial its due here with as best of a description as possible. If I happen to get their description wrong, by all means, please do let me know as well, so I can make corrections after the fact. But of course, yes, this is going to be my Illuvials tier list here, patch 1.12. So we get on into the swing of things. I'm going to start from tier 0 and slowly but surely move my way up. They are not in order down at the bottom though, so bear with me as I try to get them out here. And the first one, I mean, if anybody's been tuning in into my streams over the last couple of weeks as I've been covering Illuvium, I'm going to put in a spoiler right here, right now. There is only one F. And in fact, I am just going to call and rename it as it is. It is the Fleesh tier. The Fleesh, as cute as it is, I love the design and whatnot. I think it's really, really cute and silly. But sure, it's nice that you can go into the overworld, for example, into a tier 0 and just farm these things. Find your hollows, find ones with good stats. But at the end of the day, the Fleesh is a scion that basically shoots off the laser beam, or it takes a long time. It charges its laser, it fires it off, but it's such a short duration of the beam. It doesn't stay out for very, very long at all. And it hits whatever's in front of it first, and once it hits its target, it doesn't go any further. It does not pierce through. So what I oftentimes find is that because the Fleesh has such a short duration, it ends up firing its beam into a tank, and then it takes so long to actually charge the beam again that even if you are a stage 2 Fleesh going up in the early game against a couple of strictly stage 1s, you still lose. Even personally today, when I had an opportunity to play a round or two, I had a stage 3, so the fully evolved Fleesh. But I had to build that thing with a little bit of attack damage early, oddly enough, so not even utilizing its beam to find any value to kind of make it worth keeping. And even then, as soon as I got one other scion, I immediately replaced the tier, or the stage 3 Fleesh with a stage 1, I think, Tatofi, because just basically it feels really useless right now. And I know they're probably a little bit nervous of trying to make it good because the side effect of the beam is that whatever it hits takes more damage. So I get what they're trying to go for, where once the beam's on a target, hopefully your other Illuvials are focusing the same target, so you kind of burst it down. but it never, ever really comes out that way. So the Fleesh is the only one that's going to be in the F tier. It's got a tier all by itself. And one thing I will clarify about the tier list as well, you may see I only have one Illuvial from each line with the exception of the Lynxes. So I'm going to put all of their Stage 3 versions in the list, but the same will also apply to, like, say, their Stage 1s or Stage 2s. There's rarely, if ever, like, an opportunity, at least in my mind, where I would rank it differently based off of their Stage 2 to Stage 3. Maybe that is something I look into in the future, because now that I do look down, maybe there's like one instance that I can think of that kind of makes sense. But right now, no. Okay, keeping with the tier 0s. Let's see. Next would be the Doka. I have an Exalted Fire Doka here. I am going to be putting this into D tier. And it's basically like, sure, it's the Fist Fighter, so at least the Doka, again, able to go into the overworld in a Stage 0 run, just farm these things and get a good one for Leviathan, find yourself a holo, it's all nice and whatnot. Don't have to pay for runs to grab it, but it does fall off extremely quickly if you don't give it items or don't have it as a Stage 3. Like, even in a game earlier today, I did manage to have, I think it was a Stage 3 Earth Doka, and I kept that thing actually for a pretty decent amount of time, like, going into the mid-game, because normally I would sell off my Dokas or get rid of them off the field as soon as I could. But in that game in particular, I had a couple of attack damage items, and I gave it to the Stage 3, and it did hold its own, but you had to heavily invest in a relatively weak Illuvial. So, like, as soon as I got a Riptor, for example, as soon as I got the Scorpion, like, I immediately got rid of the Doka and then just put all the items onto the Riptor, like, without question. As soon as the Doka had another fighter with it, it's basically done so to me. But again, it's not completely useless compared to, like, the Fleesh. Next one I'm going to take a look at is going to be the Atipo. I'm going to throw the Atipo into D as well, probably to the surprise of nobody, because its ability, of course, being able to fire off a shield over a relatively decent distance around it. It's not terrible, but it really, other than the shield, its attack speed and attack damage is just so weak. If you ever get into an instance where it's a one-on-one, where it's your Atipo versus pretty much anything at even health, you will lose. The one thing that is nice about the Atipo, at least, and I'll actually say this to the Doka as well, if you do bond your ranger to it, you immediately get a class buff, basically. So whether it's the 2 fighter buff for the Doka or the 2 empath buff for the Atipo. So you do give your team that extra shield every couple seconds during the fight. So that is nice. But other than the shields it would provide, and you have to dedicate your ranger's bond to it, it's pretty weak, unfortunately. So people might then ask, like, okay, so if you can bond and get the 2 fighters or the 2 empaths, can't you just bond the Fleesh as well and get the 2 Scions? Yes, but the thing is the 2 Scions just doesn't do anything. Like, it's just, it doesn't do anything in terms of extra damage. The amount of extra damage you get for 2 Scions is so negligible. It doesn't make a difference whether or not the Fleesh can actually take out a target or not, because again, its beam is just too weak. So, that's why in D, you'll see Doka and Atipo. Meanwhile, Fleesh is down by itself in F. Next, tier 0, I am looking for the Groko. So this one, compared to the others, I'm actually going to bump this one up into C. Now, personally, if I have what I would believe is like my mid-game to late-game team, and I have a Fleesh still on it, I have an Atipo on it, and I have a Doka on it, or like any of them, I feel bad. Like, I feel like I'm underpowered, and I feel like there's a problem. I don't get that same feeling with the Groko. Like, if I'm going for my usual 5 Bulwarks, for example, if one of them happens to be a Groko, I'm okay with it, because its AoE stun, being able to stun everything around it, is still a very, very valuable thing. Sure, it might not be necessarily the tankiest of tanks when it gets down to it, but for a tier 0 unit, it's actually so valuable, and its ability is so good being able to stun things. So compared to the rest, it goes in the C to me. Granted, you can't bond your Ranger to it and immediately get the 3 Bulwark buff, for example. You do need to have at least one more. But the value of this Groko is just so much better than the rest of these, so it's going in the C for me. Wrapping things up here with our final tier 0. I think it would end up being the Valente. Not going in the Fleesh tier, no, but let's see. I think I'm going to put it into C as well. I have seen people, especially when rogues were stupid prominent in the last couple of weeks, actually go for the Exalted, so the Stage 3 fully evolved version of the Valente. And like, it does like some okay damage. It holds its own, but the fact that its ability not only has that spike of damage, but it has the silence attached to it, it requires some serious positioning. But if you can get that onto a critical target and stop it with a big silence, doesn't matter how much damage you're doing, a silence is extremely valuable. So especially with rogue compositions, like, I can see the Valente being something that you keep around for a little bit longer, and there has been instances, at least personally, where I've actually kept a Stage 2 Valente on my bench regardless of what kind of composition I'm running, just in case I need something to go dive in and silence a target if I see a vulnerable opening. So it's kind of a niche pick to keep around, but it does its job. It does its job all right. There's definitely others that do it better, but it's not bad by any means. And with that, that is the stage 1s. Why do I hate the Fleesh so much? Oddly enough, Zico Perico, you're like one of the few people that I've actually seen use it like well, especially in the grand finals later on, that I might end up casting. I just could never... This could absolutely be a skill issue. I am not opposed to this being a skill issue, but I love the design. I cannot make it work for the life of me. So that's why it's down there. Okay, I'm going to move on over into the tier 1 units. Now, I am going to start with the Kuka. I don't even have the fully evolved version this time here. I have the metal version. But basically, the Kuka and its line, it is an empath, but it's also kind of a fist fighter, so it's in an odd position where even though it's an empath, it does do a pretty decent amount of damage. Especially if you start leveling this thing up. I've seen people run away with games with the fully evolved Kukaraf. And they do have their opportunities to pop off. However, in the early stages, this thing just gets completely destroyed. Like, kicked to the bucket and just gets taken away. Sure, it has a stun, but you have to actually be alive to use it. And the thing is so dang squishy that I cannot put it any higher than C. In terms of like these heavy air compositions that do use it, you definitely want to have one. And if you happen to get into the position where you can item one like heavily, then alright. Like, I've seen it done. That's what this C tier is all about. It's like, okay, in the right condition, it can pop off. But an average everyday match, I cannot get this Kuka to work for the life of me. Not at all. Oddly enough, it might have been Zico Perico that I've seen maybe in a grand final last week that was running heavy air with shock, and that's where I've seen Kukaref pop right off. So, oddly again, Zico Perico with two of my special exceptions of sorts, which again could be a skill issue on my end, but at least personally, that's where I put it. Okay, the Chukor or the Chuko line. So, with this bear, it's nice that it has the untargetable as a part of its ability. However, I cannot ever remember a game where I was frustrated because of the bear. It felt like a tiny bit of a nuisance, but it wasn't very scary. Like, this thing just gets popped even with the untargetable, like with the smoke screen. And I know personally I tried to use this a ton because I personally am a big fan of the Wildfire perk, or Wildfire Affinity. So I would try to roll for these, especially when I was first starting off, I'd try to roll for these a lot. And I could never find the value in them. So with that, the bear, the Chuko line, or the Chukoral here, I'm actually putting this down into D. I again love the design. It's a kind of playstyle I want. But when most of the wildfires are all about being bunkered up, and the Chukoral wants to jump in, there's a bit of an anti-synergy there that I just cannot comprehend. And I've never seen somebody really pop off at this thing. Always full equipped if I can stage 3. Yeah, fair enough. If I recall correctly, too, if you do manage to get to stage 3, the attack range of Kukaraf is a little bit longer compared to like a standard fist fighter, which is a nice little bonus as well. Or I couldn't just be making stuff up. I'm not 100% sure on that, but it definitely looks that way. But yeah, in that tournament, it definitely showed us how it's done, to say the least. Next up is going to be the Apon. So the Apon, or Apon, however you want to call it, is saying an empath, earth empath that just stays planted. If you post it into the middle of your team, it fires off its ability that gives a bunch of additional damage to any of your allies that are inside of it. Meanwhile, it stuns everything and does a decent amount of damage to any enemies inside of it. This thing is basically core for anybody running some sort of magma composition, or like even just heavy earth with mud, for example. And you need this thing for Mystics as well. With Mystics, I don't really see a whole heck of a lot, to be honest. But with that, the Apon I'm going to put with B because it does its job. It does its job very well, but it's not necessarily something that you can splash into every composition. Like, I know personally I've tried to sometimes just have one on my bench that I could sub in to catch rogues. But the single stun, or I should say the single AoE, so that's kind of contradictory. But you're going to get the one stun off to everything around you. But that still isn't going to stop you from dying, at least personally. Like, say when going up against the Ramphi or the Ramphite. Having the Apon stun the Ramphite does not give you enough time to actually kill off the Ramphite or the Ramphi, even if everything else is targeting it. And even so, if you do manage to get the jump on, most players, at least as you start climbing the ladder a little bit, is smart enough to give it a little bit of extra HP, a little bit of extra health, of course, or have the one of the items that gives it the untargetable once it drops to like 40%. So either way, it's still getting its Omega ability off. So that prevents me from putting the app on any higher. However, it is still very good at what it does. Being able to damage amplify the rest of your teammates, for example, is super, super valuable. But not over the top strong. Alright, the Axodon or the Atlas line. Might be the Pikachu of Illuvium, because let's be honest, the Atlas is adorable. And in terms of cuteness scale, it's an S tier. But in terms of the Axodon, of course, its ability being able to constantly pop a bubble shield onto itself, giving it better EHP or effective HP because it's constantly throwing up that shield. With the extra splash damage, the only problem for me personally, like if you're trying to go into like a heavy water composition, the Axodon doesn't feel like enough. You need to have the bowl with it. You need the Cardalox with it. Even then, it still feels like you're so squishy. And you have to play so carefully. Trying to get Tsunami, for example, is so difficult as well, because other than the Axodon, the only other thing that gets it is the Ebb line, or the Geyser. Yeah, it's just the Geyser itself, so trying to get that is actually extremely difficult. If you do manage to get it, though, you're popping shields like crazy. So I've seen some people bind their Ranger with a water Illuvial while they have a water item, and be able to take advantage of that. And to be fair, the Axodon does do some decent damage and has a little bit of extra health, but it takes a little bit to really get it running properly. I'm gonna put it into the B slot. It does its job well, but I've never went into or came out of a game and said, gosh, I just don't know how to deal with that Axodon. That was never something that comes out of my mouth. Speaking of the Cardalox, do I just put it right next to it, or do I go into A? Because getting the Colossus on this thing and being able to make this thing viable with the later game tanks is actually pretty crazy. So I think I'm actually going to bump it into A, and having the AoE taunt, especially if you get some of the imprints or the augments that allow you to bulk yourself up, because there have been many times where I've seen the Cardalox be the last thing on the board, even though it's been getting wailed on the entire time, just because somebody threw a ton of items on it. Especially if you do manage to get the one where resistances, if you have 5 bulwarks and you have a thing where you gain resistances based off of how many units are targeting you, and then you use your ability where you taunt everything at you, that is actually pretty strong. So I think I will put Cardalox in A. 1 second, I hate this song. There we go. Alright. Okay. Yeah, so Cardalox will be above the Axodon in that instance. I wouldn't necessarily call this thing an S tier, but if you manage to get Cardalox, even just the Cardulo, like the mid-tier one, it's still very, very strong, and I've kept even the Stage 2 Cardulo on my team in late game scenarios, for example. Next up will be the Totofi line, so the Sea Forest here in this instance. One of my favorites, personally. Just love the snail as a caster. Getting it early as a Totofi isn't even necessarily that bad. The only thing is that it does take a long time to charge up that ability. However, when you do get it off, there are some pretty clutch scenarios too, since when you're charging up to actually fire it, you do get a little bit of damage reduction. So I've seen Totofis, Tiantis, and the Sephoruses clutch up some very, very close scenarios because they happen to be in that damage reduction state at the right time. So personally, in terms of its damage, especially if you throw a couple items on this, it is pretty decent. Until you at least get your heavy late game mages. And the Tianti in particular, then Sephorus, is an enabler for the Goliath to get that granite invulnerability affinity. So I'm going to put it into B. Because it does its job well. But there are many, many things that do it better, but it has that extra perk because it enables Earth teams and it enables granite. So, Sephorus, you shall be in the B tier. Okay. The Gorilla. This thing is a bugger, to put it nicely. The fact that this thing almost guaranteed, no matter what, can single out a squishy. Any of your mages, any of your healers or whatnot, because it targets based off of your... I believe it's either your resistances or HP, but either way, no matter what, it finds a way into the backline to go for those targets. You could have the tightest bunker possible. No matter what, everything kind of moves ever so slightly. This thing will find a way in. You put items on this thing, you're almost guaranteed to take out 1, maybe 2 of your opponent's units. And then the taunt from the clone this thing leaves behind has screwed over my Scions so many times that oddly enough, this might... Oh, I'm kind of torn. I'm low-key debating on throwing the Gorilla into S, but no, I think I'll put it with A. Might be too early still to fire off an S, but the thing is so good still. It's very, very strong for just a tier 1. Okay, how many more tier 1s do we have here? We got Riley and Gyro. Okay. The Hedgehog line. So Rota, Revo, Gyro. It gets into a spot where I don't think, as much as I've played up against rogues, especially over the last couple of weeks, never once have I seen, oh, if I could only deal with this damn Gyro. It's kind of just nonchalant in the background, shooting away, and then 9 times out of 10, this thing just kamikazes into the team and dies. Especially, I don't know what it is about Ramfies and Ramfights or whatever with Gyros, but it feels like Gyros are just, have some sort of magnetic pull to Ramfights as they're ulting, and these things just die immediately. I'm putting Gyro into D. This thing, I hardly ever see find true value. Maybe if you have a Revo in the early game, like, okay, you can put on some decent pressure, but even then, I still don't want it unless I'm going for air, or I'm going for dust. Then, okay, I'm going to keep it just specifically because of the affinity in the class, but otherwise, I'm staying away from this thing. Where did you go? Okay, Riley. This thing is weird. This is where skill issue comes into play, because if I understand this correctly, Riley almost kind of feels like a bit of a supportive fighter, in the sense that it heals a little bit and then gives additional attack speed, which if you're running other fighters, is a buff. However, I've seen way too many people actually throw a ton of items on this thing and still do good damage. That on top of the fact as well that this does eventually, as the Riley specifically, turn into a shock. There is some value keeping the Riley, so I'm going to put it into B tier It's not as much of a nuisance as, say, the Cardalox or the Grilla, but I've seen these things pop off, and I'd be stupid to put it into like C or lower. I did realize I had forgotten one tier 1, and that is, of course, the Tiru line, which makes sense because I feel like it gets forgotten most of the time anyway. So, classic case of the dad being kind of held back by his kid here. Like, if you want to truly get full effect of the Tiru line, you need to make it so that as the parent jumps in, as the rogue style, you need to have the Joey or the cub or whatever you want to call it, the baby, near your team so it gets the buff when its Omega ability goes off. But this thing is a shock style, which means if you're running shock, you're probably running mages and you're probably bunkering it a little bit. And if you're running the Tiru in a bunker, it means you're probably diving in directly into the enemy team and just dying immediately. So honestly, the only thing good about the Tiru line is the fact that it's a Revenant and it has shock. This thing is an affinity filler. If it wasn't for its affinity, it would be down in the Fleece tier for me personally. This could very well be a case where I'm misusing it. And by all means, if anybody wants to tell me otherwise, I'd gladly discuss it. Again, my tier list is not the end-all be-all, and again, I'm also not a very, very top player. I've played a while, but I can't say that I'm a pro by any means. So, by all means, feel free to dispute. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so I think at this point here we're going into the stage 2, or not stage 2s, the tier 2s. And tier 2 is just dedicated strictly to Lynxes. And I tell you what, if the Leviathan tournament and the tournaments afterwards, all of them recently, have taught me anything, it's how actually godlike Lynxes are. Even just the regular Lynx itself packs an okay punch when it's not even evolved. But it feels like almost no matter which form you have, the Lynxes end up being one of the best units on your board. At least to me personally. And let's see, I'm going to start off here with the Bulwark version. So the Bulwark Lynx, or the Stoic Lynx in particular, I have the Earth version, but this goes to any of the versions because they can be in any nature. But this thing basically has the same ability as the Groko, but it's much tankier and it hits for a wider range. And throwing even just like one item onto this thing almost makes it feel unkillable. Not quite to like the level of like some of these like top tier tanks, but it can carry your front line by itself if it had to. I'm putting it into A tier without question. And oddly enough, I think this is the fighter this time. Quickly taking a look. Yeah, I made sure to get different affinities so I can actually tell which one's which. But the fighter Lynx. So again, this one does stupid damage, but yet it still keeps the tankiness. And it just hits like a truck. I can't downplay this Lynx. So again, it's going into A tier because once you get into the later tiers of units, there are some that do it a little bit better in terms of DPS, but it is super strong. Same thing with the rogue. If you manage to be playing a rogue team, this ends up being one of the tanks for that squad. If you're not playing a rogue team, screw it, you have a very, very strong distraction that could still take things out by itself if you had to. If you're playing like a balanced composition, this could still find great effect. So once again, A tier. This is where I'm going to change things up though. Not every Lynx is A tier. I've got the Scion Lynx. This thing hits like a truck, however, trying to get it to actually hit its ability on the right targets, because this thing shoots in a very, very wide, like a wide radius. Think of like Guile from Street Fighter, his fireball or whatever you want to call it. It's a very, very wide arc, but it targets the thing that's in front of it, or targets the thing that it was originally targeting, instead of targeting the opponent that's the furthest away, like other Illuvials with similar abilities. So there are many times where if something is jumping on this, on the Scion Lynx, that it shoots it to the side or shoots it at an angle where it only hits one thing when it can clear out entire teams if it's angled properly. Because that can be so heavily manipulated, I'm going to put it into B. Because when it works and it actually targets well, it can single-handedly swing a game. But it is so easily manipulated, it makes it very inconsistent. I have to put it down a notch here compared to its other Lynx brethren who are just consistently good. Alright. The very, very first match I ever broadcast, I was taking part into some Virtuous or the Empath Lynx slander. I slandered the hell out of this thing, saying like it's not one of my favorites, that I do not like it. That its ability of just healing missing health was too weak. And on that front, I still do kind of believe. Like, I've seen many people now go for this Virtuous Lynx and be able to survive way longer, because when they get knocked low, the Lynx heals for more, so it holds its own pretty decently. What I'm now learning as I'm watching more and more tournaments and watching more and more gameplay is that people are basically frontlining with this thing, because one thing I never took into account is that it also does damage based off of the opponent's missing health. So it almost does like a little bit of an execute damage. So because of that, on top of it being tanky, on top of it being empath as well, this thing is extremely flexible, extremely good. It is going into A tier. Part of me even kind of wants to move it up one more. I think I'm still going to keep it at A, but I might come back to it because this thing surprised me. And one thing I say constantly, I do not mind being wrong, because it means I learned something. The Lynx is Exhibit A for that. Another tier 1 that it looks like I have forgotten is the Monkier line. So of course this thing doesn't actually have an ability. What just ends up happening is every 3 hits it does a shockwave behind the target that it hits. And it does an area of effect damage behind it. So optimally you want to load this thing up with attack speed. So obviously it becomes perfect for a fighter team. But I have never, ever seen an instance of the Exalted Monkier or a Greater Monkier or Monkiers in general being problematic. They're always just kind of there. Even when it has items, it feels like it just dies. It needs to be left alone, unhindered, and just swinging away at all times to find any value. And I just do not like the Monkier. This is going down into D. alongside Tiru. Like, sure, it gets picked up for the mud affinity and whatnot, but I don't know. Just never ever seen it really pop off. Alright. I've also, how did I forget my favorite guy of all time in the tier 1s? Archelion. Basically the staple for any bunker composition, but I've also seen this thing used in front lines, itemed up to basically be a bulwark, even though it's not actually a bulwark. This thing's an empath. But being able to have that ability that just has the big circle of healing over time around it can really help mitigate a lot of the random stray shots that come into your backline. Or if you have this thing paired up in the front line, keeping your tanks alive, especially early game. Like, I've seen a lot of people favor Archelion lately, and I definitely understand why. Especially if you're playing a bunker composition and you manage to get that one item, whether it's the Life Storm where everything around you heals over time, or the item that gives you mitigation to everything around you over time. If you happen to get multiple of those, things that should be a squishy and die quickly just don't die. So Archelion, you are the core of the bunker composition. You are an A tier. Now I think I've done all the stage, or the tier 1s. Okay. Let's go to tier 3. Oh, Vermilia, Vermilier. This thing is such a pain without actually realizing it's such a pain, at least to me personally. This thing's supposed to be one of the tanks for the rogues, but it still packs a fantastic punch while also neutering your Omega power. And if you happen to have Revenant up to tier 4 or level 4, also then reduces attack speed. Decent AoE damage while being a mass disruptor, while also being rather tanky. This is going to be my first S, even still after the nerf to Revenant. It is just too damn good. I could have a little bit of recency bias from the last patch, but I still see this thing and I die a little on the inside. Okay, Blotto. The Komodo Dragon line, so Hetty, Krunk, and Blotto. So this thing's ability, of course, as a bulwark, so this is one of your tanks, does manage to also be a wildfire as well, so we do kind of see these very, very frequently as a part of bunker compositions, but just its ability by itself kind of makes it splashable into other compositions because it fires off a smoke screen that blinds everything around it. And with the rogues being rather prominent, fighters being rather prominent right now, it is almost never a bad idea to have a Blotto in your team. If I was ranking this specifically from left to right on A, I'd probably put this at the top of A, but I'm not doing that. So I'm just probably going to end up putting Blotto into A tier. One of the best tanks out there, especially for early tiers. You do manage to enable that wildfire affinity as well, get enough items onto the Blotto so that it stays around for a long time. Really make use of that wildfire proc. It is just so good. So good. Okay. Monarch. So the Ace, Arctase, Monarch line, the AC-130s as I would call them during broadcasts. Ability just carpet bombing into the opposing team, the target furthest away. And then having most of its damage, at least personally I feel like most of its damage comes from auto attacks. The only time I've ever really seen the Monarch in particular pop off, it is because somebody stacked a bunch of items on it where it was the do more damage after hitting a shield. So it would do its carpet bomb, obviously hit like one or two shields while doing so, then land and then immediately hit like a truck. And even still, I still find it like a little bit underwhelming compared to the other things here. I am probably going to end up putting Monarch into C tier. It is nice that the Arctase does give you early access to the Inferno affinity. So you pair the Monarch up with the Ranger, for example, or while it has a fire item to get a very, very early Inferno. But even then, Inferno I find is a little bit underwhelming as an affinity. But because the Arctase can be encountered so early, and you can get to the Inferno proc early, that's why I'll put Monarch into C compared to D. Okay, the Winx line. You can't sleep on its damage, and you definitely can't sleep on its ability. Charming the two targets furthest away from it is an absolute nightmare for Scions, or anybody with a bunker composition. Can really make their life rough. However, I do feel like people are appropriately figuring out how to play around this thing now. And otherwise, you're just using this as an empath, and it's 100% going to be on your squad if you're going for air, if you're going for dust. But otherwise, it's nowhere near as dominant as it used to be, to say the least. I feel like we used to see these splashed onto basically every single team. Not so much anymore. It does its job well, but I wouldn't put it any higher than B, at least personally. Okay. Slashing, slapping, stabbing, whatever it happens to be. The Penguin. The Penguin Rogue. The amount of times in tournaments have really opened my eyes to this thing. Where it may be a stage, or no, a tier 3. But even as a stabbing, so the middle evolution, if you have items dedicated to attack and attack speed, this thing is a monster. I've seen it 1v5 teams and still sit at high HP. If you happen to get the item that makes your attack speed faster, but also gives you attack range to jagged something, I remember off the top of my head. But this thing, it comes ridiculous. When it pops an ability, it gets additional damage and additional range on top of that. So not only is it a rogue, it's probably a rogue that you cannot reach until your critical Illuvials are already taken down. And by the time you flank it, it's still already wound up good to go, and it is going to wreck you. Slashing is an S to me. Okay, next up, the Riptor line. Scorpions. The fact that it has a very, very simple ability, of course, it just shanks you with its tail, but with how fast this thing is, how much damage it does, especially I've seen as of late Rip Lances just popping off. easily blendable into a standard fighter composition, doesn't have to have anything to do with water. A lot of times too, people will have the Cardalocks on their team or Cardalo, so you already have the opportunity to go for Toxic, and just having that extra utility for the Riplance or the Riptorus or whatever you happen to be using. Just having that extra Toxic proc is just so good. Throw this thing with items too. I've seen this thing become an absolute menace. I wouldn't call this S tier, but I would absolutely call it A tier, which I'm personally happy with. I love the look of this thing. I love seeing it there. I don't feel bad when I get killed by it, but I tend to get killed by it a lot. Gnarl. Okay, so this thing's ability, it fires off vines across the team to the 2 farthest targets. It can interrupt, which is nice. So again, just an absolute nightmare for Scions. But compared to other tanks, it does feel like it gets chunked much quicker, unless you are lucky enough to have the Verdant affinity with you. Because it gets chunked extremely quickly down to half, but then the Verdant puddle comes through to try and heal you through. But even then, I tend to see Gnarls just get torn through. Even as like their fully evolved variant. They're good. They do what they need to do. But they tend to just get shredded, at least to me. Definitely has its use, but it's not really the star of your team. Oh, Melora. Screw this thing. Seriously. So, not only is it a rogue, it's a very tanky rogue, similarly to how the Vermilio is. And instead of neutering and disabling your team by attack speed and omega power debuffs, this thing charms you. So it stops whatever you're doing, makes it walk to you, or walk to it, then pops back out in an AoE area of effect slice across the entire squad in a relatively decent range. It's tanky, it does a ton of damage, it interrupts. I think we're kind of starting to see why rogues were pretty damn good. So that's 3 rogues in S tier right now. But Melora in particular, very annoying. It may not be the thing that's necessarily taken my team out, but it's preventing me from playing the game the way that I want to. So that's why. It's a fantastic disabler. And you can honestly splash this thing probably into any teams too, even, never mind the fully evolved version. Take the Lura or the Lodora, the second evolution, or even the baby form, just as an annoying interrupt can still be so valuable. Is that it for the tier 3s? I think so. I'll go through these final 2 tiers. And then of course we do have the cast for the latest grand final in the Dreamers Esports Tournament. Keep myself sharp on casting. I know I did not post the grand final video of the last one I casted. And as much as I'm trying not to be picky of what I post, the last grand final I casted, I was so tired during it. I was missing players' tags, I was calling them by the wrong name, I was calling the Illuvials wrong, I was making the calls wrong. I just could not post that one. So I gotta keep myself sharp. And we'll get into that Dreamers Esports Grand Final in just probably about 15 minutes time here. Do these other 2 and get a quick water break in, and then hop into it. Okay. Tier 4. Let's start with the Mammoth. This thing is interesting. Part of me wishes it was a bulwark, because it kind of plays like a tank, even though it has a little bit of extra range compared to a standard tank. But its ability is so good. Being able to pick up an Illuvial that's near it and yeet the thing into the opponent and then stunning anything around it is so good. I undervalued this thing so much for so long. Maybe to the point where I even overvalue it a little bit now, but I think Mammoth is God tier. Like S tier for sure. It can be one of your only hopes versus rogues. Don't want to deal with it, just yeet it out of the way. The fact that it could disrupt and stun multiple targets, it's just so good. So good. And the fact that it does, or it is a Scion instead of a Bulwark though, is pretty cool too, because it makes it so that if you don't necessarily have two strong Scions, in terms of like mages, that's okay. You could have a tanky Scion and then have one carry Scion. So pretty valuable in that regard. Okay. The Beyblade. Flare, Singe, or Sear. Of course, it is a tank, it's Bulwark, but it is meant to kind of be a damage-dealing tank. Its ability being able to spin around like a battle top, like a Beyblade, and just do continuous damage across multiple targets is nice, but the big problem with it is that there are so many things in the game that can stop it from spinning that it just ends up being a standing meat shield. And while it does have a strong affinity, of course you do have the magma affinity attached to it, and it is a bulwark, so you want it for your 3 or 5 bulwarks. When it comes to strictly the ability itself with it, because it gets messed with so often, there's been times where I've definitely debated to myself, do I really want to keep leveling up the Flare or my Singe, or throw my Groko back in and have a consistent AoE stun? So yeah, this thing's going down into C tier for me. I love its design, I love the way it plays, but it gets screwed with way too much. If anything, it's an enabler, again, for another Illuvial, which happens, of course, to be the Pyrox, or the Scoriox. Because, of course, this thing is also of the Magma affinity. But this thing, it's nice and simple. It doesn't have a big old nuke as an ability. This thing just sits in your backline and shoots as fast as possible. Constant, safe, consistent damage, as long as you don't get stunned or charmed. You will be doing damage no matter what. You get silenced, it really does not matter, you're just auto-attacking. Like, sure, its ability gives it a little bit of extra attack speed and a little bit of extra damage, but you can live without that and just keep shooting. And especially with some of the compositions I've been seeing as of late, where we're putting like Verdant Wildfire Bunker mixed with Scoriox, it is actually extremely scary. However, it's not necessarily splashable to me. Like, you have to dedicate to playing Protect the Carry. Classic Protect the Kog'Maw kind of style for those League fans out there. Protect the AD carry as much as possible, because yeah, if you do it, you're successful, but if this thing gets taken off the board quickly, you've lost all value. So I'm gonna put it into A, because what it does extremely well, but it has vulnerabilities that can prevent it from getting its full value. Compared to the rest of these S tiers, that either they just have to have one ability go off, and they've already found value to the fight, or they're so elusive that no matter what, they're consistently finding value in the fight. Okay, next up. The Dash, Rake, or Umbre, or Umber, however you want to call it. So this is another water rogue, but this one is more so aligned with the steam composition. Does not tend to be the standout when it comes to the rest of the rogues. Yes, it has that untargetable by going into its smokescreen mode and then doing a ton of damage to a couple of the units around it. So finding decent damage with this, the Umber, or the Dash line, is a pretty safe bet. It usually does not fall before getting at least one Omega ability off. But you have to load this thing with items to really get serious effectiveness for it. And even then, I feel like you need Steam as well to keep buffing it over time to really find super effectiveness. So meanwhile, compared to something like, say, the Penguin, where I have it up in the S tier, the Penguin, no matter what, is doing damage based off of its auto attacks. And it finds a way to stay safe from range where it's usually never really targeted. Meanwhile, the Rake tends to jump in by itself. It has to be point blank. Sure, it briefly goes untargetable, but very rarely do I really see it pop off and get the opportunities that, say, the Penguin does. So this thing is still good, but you need a few more things to kind of back it up. There's been many times, I know at least personally, where if I'm playing my Steam style, where I've put this thing in and given it a couple of items, and it still feels like it's in like maybe the middle of my team's damage charts. So I'm going to be putting the Umber into the A tier. It is good, but it's a little less consistent. Okay, the Ebb line. The only other tsunami in the game outside of the Axodon. This thing does not attack at all. It just sits pretty, takes damage, and eventually spits rain across the entire field, which hits both ally and enemy, hurts the enemies, heals the allies, for a very, very small amount. It can sometimes supplement a bunker composition. What I know I personally like to do if I happen to have one of these around is for all those Illuvials that shoot the furthest thing away from it, I will purposely make it so that it attacks the Ebb or the Geyser, whatever it happens to be. I'll make it so that it attacks this instead, so it charges its ability faster, and in turn heals the team faster. But other than just kind of being a target and a beefy target, it feels like a bit of a dead weight to me. Like, if you're going for water, if you're going for empaths, yeah, you're probably having it. It does have some use in regards to retargeting, but it's going into the C tier for me. It has its one specific niche, and that's really it. And even then, you can get away with not having an Ebb on your squad. Two more tier 4s here. Jotun, so the bear. If there was any counter to the rogues in the last patch, it was fighters, and specifically, it was the polar bear line. There'd be a lot of players that I would see jack this thing up with items, especially if it happens to get power ascent Where like I don't know if it doubles, but it gives it a ton more damage amp. It gives it a ton of damage reduction, as well as a ton of damage amplification for itself. The unstoppable polar bear was truly devastating. And a lot of times, like, you would need the team to focus it extremely quickly, but of course the player playing this composition is going to know that, so they position it properly. And it almost felt like there was nothing that you can do versus this thing. So with that, I think the polar bear's S. Not again. Okay, last one for tier 4. We do have the Blazonite line, or the Fern line. One of the super chickens here in Illuvium. So this thing, naturally nature and Templar, if I do recall correctly. You manage to get the Blazonite, you do get access to that Wildfire perk, which does go alongside a bunker composition quite nicely. So if you do manage to have the Ranger, the Blotto, and the Blazonite on your team, that is pretty devastating for consistent damage and consistent healing to yourself. And it's again one of those ones similarly to the Kukaraf, where it may be an empath, but it does a ton of damage still. And not to mention its ability itself being able to shoot the furthest thing away, but it travels through the entire team, and if something was casting while it was flying through, it does disrupt the cast. So, say if Fleesh was charging and firing its beam, nope, it's getting disrupted. The Sephorus was winding up for a shot, nope, not happening. It gets the disruption in. Shout out to everybody who remembers when the Blazonite's ability used to stun. Remember when that was the thing? That was broken as hell. But glad we don't live in those times anymore. But even still, between the damage and the utility, plus being the perfect fit in for a bunker composition, Blazonite, you're S tier to me. Which leaves us with our tier 5s. Starting off with the deer, the Adoro. I feel like this thing was so much better before. You can splash it basically onto any team because its ability was that it just healed the lowest 3 targets, depending on an amount of its missing health. But I don't know if it got tuned down or what, but that heal feels like it barely makes a dent anymore, even from the Adoro stage. So I'm almost not as willing to splash it in as much as I used to. I wouldn't call it A. Like, yes, there's a time and place for it. It's nice having a heal that does not require the bunker composition. So it does its job well, but it's definitely not a must-have like it used to be, at least in my opinion. Titanor. Now, of course, this thing does get enabled by TNT once it gets the granite affinity. And you throw some tanky items on top of this as well. It's for sure going to survive the first couple of seconds because of its invulnerability. But I've seen, I think I've even had a short that I posted recently about it, where a fully loaded Forus was wailing on this Goliath. It wasn't even the Titanor, it was the Goliath. And it couldn't kill it at all. The health bar basically did not move at all, to the point where the overtime damage came through and timed out the forest, basically. This thing just has, I think, probably the highest defenses and tank and health in the game, having the invulnerability. And then I didn't even go over its own ability, which of course shoots at the target furthest away from it, but it stuns every single thing that it hits. The tankiness on alongside the utility, I would be stupid to not put this thing in S tier. Alright, the Alfie line. This is personally, again, one of my favorite units. I love the fact of like a hydro pump kind of style ability. It goes through, unlike the Fleesh, where the Fleesh charges up, like takes a long time to charge up. It shoots its laser and hits the first target and it stops. No matter what, this one will go through every single target until it makes it to the target that's the furthest away from it. And it kind of goes one of two ways. Either you absolutely demolish everything in the line, or it's so damn tanky it might have not have just shot its shot even. There's been sometimes too very similar to how the Arcane Lynx, the Scion Lynx is, where targeting can kind of screw you a little bit. People have gotten pretty good at playing around Alfies. As soon as they see it, they know like, okay, I better put one of my tankier members at the very, very back, or make sure that the furthest thing away from it is not in the line of fire. So what I will say, the Alfie line, this thing is absolutely a noob killer. But when you get to the higher levels, it does get played around much better. So very, very similar to, I think, the Adoro here. I'm going to put it down here because, again, the highs of the Alfie popping off are amazing. But the lows are just frustrating. Not to mention if you just get interrupted, and everybody's using Blazonite anyway, so it's probably, like, core enemy number one is probably Blazonite. Because it gets its beam interrupted over and over and over again. So it's good, and it's absolutely a noob slayer, but it's not as consistent as some of the other things on this list. One mage that is rather consistent, though, is the Squeeze line. So that's the Squeeze Octius, or this one that I'm holding here that I cannot even remember the name of because I hardly ever see it because everybody is going for it. The King or the Queen of the Shock Affinity, with the ability that rains lightning onto the two lowest health targets, and the fact that you get to shoot it again if you can land a finishing blow is absolutely absurd. Especially if you can get it into its final form. Like if you get it into Squeeze, or if you get the Squeeze, like it's nice having the resets, but its damage isn't really that high. You get to the Octius, it's like, okay, now you're actually chunking. If you get the stage 3 version that I'm holding right here, this thing one-shots things. Especially if you have other Scions with it and you're getting additional Scion perks. It takes a little bit of setup. You have to protect this thing like the Scoriox. But there are instances where the Octius can get jumped on, fire off one ability, still do enough damage for the rest of your team to win the fight. And that is going to be the difference maker between me putting this in A tier alongside the Scoriox and throwing it its ass. It's like, yes, it's squishy, but again, sometimes it just takes one set of abilities. It takes one shot. And you will get your money's worth. The Foe line. So this, of course, is a Nature Arcanite or a Nature Fighter. It does have a pretty cool ability where it has a short-ranged area of effect in front of it that comes out extremely quickly. So anytime it fires it off, like maybe 2 or 3 Illuvials wide of AoE damage depending on where it's pointing. This thing loaded up, in the right circumstances, can run away with a game. You give it Bloom as well if you happen to pair this up with like the Malura or something like that. And it's constantly buffing itself and healing itself. That's actually terrifying. One thing I've also seen extremely terrifying that I personally love, if you happen to get the Wildfire imprint and you put it on this thing, Wildfire procs every single time that you use your Omega ability, and this thing fires off its Omega ability so fast, so it spreads Wildfire so fast. And heals from it, which is just absolute insanity. But it is not a guaranteed thing. Like I've said earlier on, like I've seen Goliath versus Forest, and the Forest just be completely walled by the Goliath. Victory thing is not guaranteed. You have to position it properly, you have to be careful and aim loaded up with items. But it is still very good. I am going to put the foe line into A. Last but not least, the Charizard of our game. The Ramphy line, so that's your Ramphy, Ramp Fight, and Ramp Fire. So, easily the most polarizing ability in the entire game. Where it jumps on in, jumps to the skies, and it has a gigantic area of effect that can just burst entire teams by itself. It is a rogue, of course, so it could dive in, and you optimally want to dive this thing into the middle of everybody. So yes, it can be turned on, yes, it can be focused. However, this thing has enough health right now that even if it jumps into an Appon, for example, gets taunted by a Cardillo at the same, or like right after the fact, it probably still has enough tank, at least at the ramp fight stage, that it can get its ability off, and that's all you need. You just need one. I've seen entire bunker compositions, I've had my entire bunker composition completely shredded, massive tank lines chunked down to half, healers and DPS one-shot. And the ramp fight didn't even get into the middle of my composition. Because that's the thing too, its range is so strong right now that even if you have a bunker composition and you push it off to like the right-hand side, if I'm in the corner, the ramp fight jumping up is still going to make it at least into the middle. So it's messing with my my Archos or my Archelion. It's probably taking a couple of my empaths with it. It's chunking my tanks, and God forbid if this thing did happen to sneak in maybe a little bit, walk into the bunker a little bit, it probably took out my Scoriox as well. Part of this is I know I'm terrible at positioning and I'm bad at the game. This thing is also very, very similar to the Alfie line, a Noob Slayer. But what makes it stand out compared to the Alfie line is not only is it a Noob Slayer, it still finds value in top play. It's not a matter of, oh, just stun it, forehead. Well, that's perfectly fine. Well, they itemize against it. Like I was saying before, a lot of times it's not very uncommon to see the ramp fight with the ability or with the item that makes it so that at 40% health it goes untargetable. Heck, in a short that I recently posted, I had the Granite imprint and I threw Granite onto the ramp fight so it dove into the middle of the team, was invulnerable, and it got its ability off for free. Like, what are you supposed to do against that? And just watch as your team gets melted away. Honestly, not only is Ramp Fight, or Ramp Fire, Ramp V S, I would argue if I was lining this up that it's probably best of the best, because while it is a little bit inconsistent in regards to, like, some people have gotten really, really good at trying to manipulate its pathing, I personally still think enough damage is done, even if it's hitting one or two targets, that it's just super, super strong. And with that, thanks for listening to me yap about Illuvials. This, of course, is just based off of patch 1.12. And this is all my personal opinion, of course. This is not the end-all be-all. This is not the mindset of a professional player. So please, of course, take this with a grain of salt. And if you want to discuss my Illuvials positioning and rankings, you're more than welcome to. But at least personally for today, this is where my mind's at. I'm going to take a very, very quick water break, and then it's time to get started here with our next Dreamers Esports Grand Final. I might be going a little bit long today. I yapped for like an hour and a half. Holy crap. Okay, I will be 1 second. All right. Get everything situated here. I can't believe I yapped that long about Illuvials. I mean, that's the caster and me coming out. If you need me to fill, I will fill time as best as I possibly can. All right. So, of course, next thing on the docket, we're going to be covering the Dreamers Esports DayDream Illuvium Tournament. Just happened again earlier this afternoon. Every Tuesday and Friday they have their tournaments, and I personally love to cast these just to keep myself in practice in regards to casting Illuvium. There's some awesome moments that, of course, happen. There's some awesome prizes, of course, alongside it as well. And I will mention it up here and there, but of course this is not, one, sponsored by Illuvium, nor sponsored by Dreamers Esports. The admins, David Liga and Winnie, do know that I do this, and we are mutually happy with each other's cooperation, but no sort of sponsorship or anything along those lines between Illuvium or Dreamers or I just do this because I find it fun. In regards to casting, because I know some people are probably curious if you didn't hear me mention it earlier, but of course the Illuvium Pro League does start technically on Friday, but its tournament itself is on Saturday. And in regards to coverage for it, for the first one, I am not going to be able to cover the IPL 250. Not because I don't want to, or that I have anything saying that I cannot do it from Illuvium. No, they've been nothing but encouraging and motivating to me to keep on going. I just, unfortunately, for the sake of casting a tournament, I have a wedding to go to. So, I will not be able to make any coverage for the first tournament. However, you damn well know, the week after, next week, of course, I will read up as best as possible in regards to what happened during week one, and then we'll try to continue some coverage from there. One way or another. I want to be there. I look forward to it. And I'm looking forward to casting it for all of you. Let's see. Time to kill the music. And let's get into the swing of things here. Switching over. In 3, 2, 1. Alright, welcome back, people. We've got ourselves another Daydream Tournament here by Dreamers Esports in the Illuvium Arena. Of course, patch 1.12, the Revenants and Rogues have been toned back a touch, but it does not mean we will not see them. And we're looking forward to yet another fantastic tournament. These, of course, like I was saying before, every Tuesday and Friday for Illuvium, with some rather nice prizing on the line as a part of the Dream Ladder. So definitely recommend anybody who's competing or looking to compete in Illuvium to check out Dreamers Esports. Their link will be in the video description below. Of course, our grand finalists here today: Winnie from Team Monarch, Detective Alane, Yami Yugi, Squawk from Team Monarch, OLA Neriba, and Newstology, OLA Frodo, as well as our winner from the last tournament, Zico Perico. It was pretty much a almost a full house here for the Dreamers Esports Tournament. I know they cap those tournaments usually at 32 players, and I think we were basically at 29, so a very, very solid turnout, unless these players have been playing all afternoon to compete and try and play for the USDC prize money that is a part of each individual tournament as well. And one thing, of course, that has been requested, as you see me playing around with the camera, shout out again to Rich from Illuvium for teaching me how to actually move the free cam. I'll be playing with that a little bit here in this match, of course. But I know I had a couple of requests in regards to camera angles going into the Illuvium matches, mainly with the suggestion of just keeping it default. Now, I'm going to compromise here, because personally, I come from, not that I come from, but I like the traditional sports style of where I'm sitting at center ice or center court, shooting sideways with both teams on each side. But I also do understand that positioning can be a little bit tough to understand going into these rounds. So what I'm going to end up doing here is, during the setup phase, I am going to be keeping it on default, but as soon as the little bell goes off where people can't move their Illuvials anymore, I'm going to switch it to my side-by-side view. By all means, feel free to let me know how you like or dislike that in the comments below. At the end of the day, this is for you, it is for the people. I may have my own preference, but if I can tell it's overwhelming that people want it a specific way, I can absolutely do that. I can put my ego aside for that, absolutely. I don't mind being wrong. It means I learned something. And of course, these matches are broadcasted live here on Twitch, YouTube, and Kick. So if you hear me referencing chat every once in a while, it's because I was recording this live. Or rather, the match was recorded, but then I cast over it live, so to speak. As we now can finally start getting into the rounds, now that we're here in round 6. A little of a back and forth, of course, people. Right before I was talking about the tournament, I was talking about tier lists for each of the Illuvials. I'm sure that'll be a video at some point here. And I was going over how I was slandering the heck out of the Virtuous Lynx, thinking that it was rather underpowered, but we're seeing both Detective Alane and Squawk using it to very, very strong fashion, especially here for Squawk coming in clutch. And of course, our first NPC round before we get into the carousel, right around the corner, taking a look at our health bars. Yami Yugi going to be leading this lobby alongside Squawk. going for bulwarks and empaths. Meanwhile, we do have Detective Alanay, of course. Empath, the rogue, and the bulwark. Fighters and bulwarks here for Winnie. Maybe possibly setting up for a wildfire play of some sort. Maybe same thing here. The one above it. And Volley's Neraba, who shoutouts to Neraba, was streaming their point of view during these. And I think streams their point of view for most tournaments. So definitely check them out on X if you have not done so already. At least that's where I saw their stream. It could be Twitch as well. With it being the Taiga Boreal region, it means that we're just going to be getting the extra perk of re-rolling our drone augments one extra time. So compared to some regions, this one is very, very tame. It hardly is going to affect the match at all. I know there was a lot of discussion in the Discord, in the arena section in particular, about how a lot of people thought that there's too much luck in regards to winning these matches. First off, hey, have you played an auto-battler before? But two, like, there is some that are maybe a little bit more hectic than others, but adapt or lose, right? Yeah, of course, again, it's Yami Yugi leading the lobby here alongside Squawk and a couple others. We're going to ride along here with iNostology, who, it's the first time I think I've seen them here on the stream. However, Ole Frodo, not a new face here whatsoever. In fact, one of our past Dreamers Esports DayDream Tournament winners. So very familiar with Ole Frodo. The Fighters Empaths up against Fighter Bulwark. The slugfest dead center with the Ranger in the background, firing off the boomerangs. But as of right now, this one's looking very, very strong here for the green side. iNostology is just going to slowly chop on through. That Mammoth does get a nice stun onto multiple healers, but it does not matter. Too many low health bars is going to cause Frodo to take the hit here. iNostology taking this one. And of course, looking around the board, gotta look for those hollows. Some pretty hollows, of course. I know personally, I've been hopping back into the overworld a little bit, and I don't know about you, but compared to the last time I hopped into overworld, I am seeing so many more stage 3s. It's not even funny. Like, maybe not in tier 0 runs, or stage 0 runs, but in stage 1s, I feel like I'm finding exalted gorillas and, like, Archelions and gyros, like, all over the place now. That used to be so hard to find. So definitely, if you've not done so already, hop into Overworld. Now's a good time. Detective Alanay versus Zico Parico here for our next matchup. 4 Empaths versus the Scion Bulwark combination. As we do see, actually, the Stage 3 fully evolved Fleesh that might be here to make me eat my words. In my tier list, I was just cussing out, slandering the Fleesh about how it cannot one-shot anything. Meanwhile, Zico Parico's Fleesh definitely took care of that Apon. However, that Valente was right on top of it, as you're going to see, Zico Parico is going to fall to this one. Too many bodies to have to go through. But I'm curious. How long will they keep that Fleesh? As we do see, even the Exalted Valente as well, so I thought that was stage 2. No, that thing's fully evolved, and all it had was the damage augment for just a little extra damage, the 10% damage. And it's up in the 4,000s in terms of damage. Meanwhile, say the Fleesh, for example, it barely broke 1.5 thousand. Oh, hang on, that might not have been a stage 3. I can't remember. That might have just still been the stage 2 Fleesh. Now, that is a pretty... I was going to say a pretty TNT. No, that's a pretty entire bench, entire team. So many shinies there for Squawk, one of the holo collectors that I've come across here in the tournament scene. Not only is their team deadly, they are also very, very pretty. If you hear them meowing in the background, say hi to Nascat, just constantly popping off in the background. Hopefully, they will sleep sometime soon here. Yami Yugi going up against Squawk this time by. Squawk taking a little bit of damage, but still in the 90s, as we do see the Virtuous Lynx coming in clutch to try and keep that entire bunker alive, taking a lot of damage, does have that increased attack speed. Here comes the Execute plus heal, does manage to get through the 1, but there's still a lot of damage being done to this front line. Back and forth now. The Atipo going to try and front line here for the TNT. If the TNT can get one more shot off, they might be able to clutch this one up. They're almost there. That Atipo still hanging on by a thread. The Apon does not do that much damage. The shots fired from TNT does take down the Ranger. Now it's just a matter of dealing with the Apon. Overtime damage going to come on through, and it's not going to be enough. That hollow TNT coming in clutch with the Atipo there. That extra little bit of shielding and just being a meat shield in its own right is going to be enough for Squawk to get the turnaround here. As we hop on over here, Winnie Monarch versus Zico Perico, and again, I have to showcase off this this battle board. I do think it is a very, very cool one. Even this part just by itself, the red and orange, I actually love this color scheme here for the battle board. But the Illuvatars off in the background is also very, very cool to see. And sure enough, we do have the Exalted Fleesh. So my Fleesh slander from my tier list, is it going to come out here to bite me? We'll have to see. 4 Scions, 3 Bulwarks, and Harbinger as well here for the side of Zico Perico. Meanwhile, on the other side here, 3 Bulwark, 3 Fighter, 2 Templar, 2 Empath, very, very balanced. Lots of damage going to be coming up through here. That Crunk is also loaded up with tank items. That's going to be hard to deal with. And the Scions, we're seeing why they have such a hard time early here. They immediately get popped. That Axon's trying to hold the line as best as possible. AC-130 is coming on through, but it is going to get shot down so quickly. Fleesh, nearly about time to fire off again. It is going to be able to take care of the Lynx, but there is still, again, just not enough duration on that beam. The Fleesh tires out so quickly, and with the Fern and the Crunk up front in your face like that, there's not much you can do. And shoutouts to the Crunk leading the damage charts in that one as well. While just holding tank items, that is pretty crazy. Squawk is going to lead the charge here. Take one more look again at their extremely hollowed out, decked out team. Very, very cool to see. Take a look at some of these compositions. Of course, we do have Fighters and Bulwarks over here for Yami Yugi. Bulwarks and Empaths right here for Squawk. Detective Alané. Empath Mystic coming on through with a couple Rogues. Fighters and Empaths and 2 Bulwarks here for Inustology. Looking to maybe set themselves up for a bunker. I do see a couple of the usual suspects for that kind of setup. Go over the rest in just a second here. Play with the camera a little bit more. See that hollowed out team. Oh, hi Squawk. The team hollowed out and whatnot. Unfortunately missed Winnie's, but we do have, of course, Scions there for Zico Perico. Scion Empath Fighter coming out here from Frodo. Scion Bulwark. So I am seeing a lot more Scions, but I know as somebody personally who, if I'm not playing a Wildfire kind of style bunker composition, my second favorite is Scion Steam. And I've noticed that Scions in general, like if you're trying to go for them early, you're probably getting wrecked. Meanwhile, let's take a look at our next matchup. Frodo versus Nereba, an OLA team kill here. That's Railu is loaded up with items, but at the same time, look at that Ramphy. That is a very, very scary Ramphy. Got plenty of Omega power, so it's going to be able to one-shot things. It has the disengage as well, so now it's going to be able to get out of dodge. Actually, I don't even think the untargetable even triggered there, so it still has it in its back pocket. Granted, its ult did not necessarily hit any targets. Everybody just ran away. But he's still there, still ready to play. And did the Rilo actually just dodge the ability? That'd be kind of clutch if it did. Another one coming right up here The bear is going to get that power ascent, so it has so much more health in the tank, but its only backup right now is the Revo, and this thing just tickles you at most. That bear is eventually going to end up falling here. It's just a matter of dealing with this Revo, which should not be problematic here for Niraba at all. Frodo is going to win the OLA team kill this time. Or excuse me, it wasn't Niraba. No, that was... I might have casted that one backwards, but whoopsie. Again, of course, doing these casts, it's a perfect time as I'm blundering here as we watch Winnie and Yami Yugi set on up here. But these casts, first and foremost, is just a way, an outlet for me to practice. And I feel like if I can also entertain you at the exact same time, then absolutely I will do my best to do so. But by all means, any feedback is welcome, whether it be here in the live chat or in the comments after the fact. By all means, light me up. Winnie, 4 Bulwark, 3 Fighters, 2 Templars, 2 Empaths. Very balanced across the board here. Very similar scenario here for the side of Yami Yugi. Slugfest in center field. It's going to be going over to Winnie as of right now. But that backline could still be scary. We're seeing the wildfires procking from both sides here. This arena is about to blaze on over. And it looks like now that is where things are going to swing. That virtuous empath Lynx in a perfect prime position to maximize its healing, but it gets stunned. So the tank line is going to fall. That loaded up Scarabok tanking everything here for Yami Yugi. What looked like it was Winnie's to win ended up getting turned over. And crazy to see that it was actually the Rangers leading the charge here on both sides. But for Yami Yugi, that Ranger was also a wildfire, so every time it fired off its boomerang ability, the next auto attack lit the character on fire. So was maybe able to get more wildfires procced earlier in the fight, and maybe that was just enough to get the ball rolling. As we see the carousel here for our next round, we have some juicy targets, and I was going to say iNostology, especially if you're planning on playing any sort of bunker composition, you probably want that item. That is the one that I was talking about earlier during the tier list, where you stick that on somebody in the center of your team, and anybody around it gets mitigation, and just makes your team so tanky, even though they're supposed to be the ones getting popped. And with the lineup here right now, sure enough, that is a usual suspect for popping that item on. We're going to see the Archos in the front line going to be holding that alongside their 2 tanks. The Singe is also there as well, could possibly take advantage of it. But not opting for full bunker, a little bit of actual switcheroos here. As we do see in regards to the carries for each of these teams, the Rake on the side of Zico Perico alongside that Exalted Fleesh going up against that fully loaded Pyre. Sange spin the win right in the middle of everybody. Is there anybody here that can actually stun that thing? The closest thing would have been the Gnarl, but it was not able to do so. The Fleesh is going to get jumped on by the Ranger of all things. Of course, that might be a fighter, but it acts like a rogue, and Zico Perico is going to take another solid hit here from the squad. This hollowed out Pyre alongside the damage of the tank line and the Ranger coming in clutch there. But that's, again, one of those scenarios where if the Singe does manage to get that spin to win off without interruption, sure, it does a ton of damage, but there are many things in this game that can shut things down, and one of them would have been the Cling. It was right there, but it did not get its ability off, or did not get the ability off in the right direction. So it just spun on top of them the whole time. We ride along now here with Detective Alanay, going for 7 Empath, 2 Mystic. This is a very safe, shielded, and strong team, as we now see in regards to the carries. We do have a Virtuous Zephyr Link, so a stage 3 fully evolved one, not only a healer, but set up to do damage. In this one, I'm very curious to see how this one goes. Meanwhile, we're seeing that Vermilio and the Revo dive directly in. Look for this Vermilio popping around all of them. Not much damage actually being done. The Ranger took it all, but oddly enough, that should have been everybody taking damage, at least if I do say so myself. So a big break here for Yami-Yugi that it did not go the way that I was expecting. That Fur Knight is just firing away from the background, but this is now where that Virtuous Zephyr Link is going to come into clutch as some of these health bars get extremely low, but it's not going to be fast enough to get the heals out. Does Yami-Yugi have enough to take out Detective Alané? I don't necessarily know here. The heals coming out once again to kind of nullify that wildfire damage. This one is going down to the overtime damage. Here comes the big shields coming out from the empath, and that should be enough to hold the line. Detective Alané winning that one in very close fashion. And look at the healing here from this Virtuous Zephyr Links. Almost 7,000 healing, while also doing very well in the damage charts. Virtuous Links, I am sorry that I've ever slandered you. You're absolutely incredible. As we go through another NPC round, let's take a look and see what everybody's using here. 7 Empath and Mystics here for Detective Alané. Missed Winning Monarch again, I am so sorry. But Anusology, Bulwarks, and Fighters. Bulwarks, Harbingers, and Scions focused mainly on Earth, maybe set up for Magma here for Squawk. Yami-Yugi looking to play some Wildfire here. Alongside Naraba's Empaths and Scions, a little bit of Revenant kind of tucked in there as well, but nowhere near ready for the level 4. Heavy Scions coming out here for Zico Perico, and at that Water Scions, which I know is something as personally I've never been able to find success with, so I'm going to be keeping extra attention to that. Meanwhile, we do see Frodo taking a lot of damage here in this one, going to possibly be the first one to approach the hot seat. But I'm not going to worry about that one just yet. We do have Inustology, who of course is all bunkered up with Spore, relying heavily on this newly formed Pyrox. Going up against Naraba, who might have found the rogue they were looking for. That ramp fight, loaded up with items, of course. We've seen it in action once earlier, did pretty decent, and this is looking like another fantastic setup here for the ramp fight. To the skies we go, and goodbye! Completely annihilates the back line. Now it's just a matter of going up to the skies one more time, finishing off those healers. That is going to be the Archos down. Sure, the tanks are still alive, the Adordo is still alive, but there is no damage on this squad. They will eventually be chipped away unless this Ranger has anything to say about it. Dives directly on top of the squad, and with the ramp fight going up one more time, I highly doubt that one's going to end up working. Just a matter of going through this crunk, which should not be tough. One more time to skies. That is probably the most ramp fight ults I have seen in a single round. But with that, look at that damage. Almost 15,000 for that ramp fight. Really finding its mark, finding its value. It may have not necessarily had the one shot, but when it found its mark, it made it work. Eliminating the back line and eliminating damage early, then getting the healers, then getting the tanks, and then one very slippery little Ranger. I mean, at this point here, it might be a little bit early to call the hot seat, but a bad loss here for Frodo could be the elimination mark. So we'll have to see how this one ends up going. Zico Perico ready to go, does have the Alfie here as well, and it looks like the Fleesh has finally been retired. Unless I am mistaken, I can't see it as this moment, but the Octius is here as well, trying their damnedest to burst down the squad. Hydro Pump gonna be going right on towards that Winx, but you have to deal with the bear, and the bear is on top of you with that Power Ascent, and it is going to absolutely ignore the numbers game. You might have Vermilio there alongside you, just kind of holding the line, but that bear was so devastating. It's gonna win this one. See some serious damage being done here from both the Alfie line and the Ranger on Zico Perico's side, but that bear was just too much here. Zico up against Winnie Monarch. Naraba's been knocked down to 27 as well. Frodo still sitting at 22. Similar position as last time, of course. One bad loss could very well mean elimination. I'll try again and see if this bear can hold the line, but this time it's gonna have to go up against this virtuous Zephyrlynx that can not only, of course, heal, but whittle away at you as well if you're within range, while still being seriously tanky. The positioning, though, for Detective Alanay might have been caught, though. That poor little deer is going to get immediately mauled by the bear. So if they are expecting that Doro to heal for a long time, they could be out of luck. But actually, it got distracted somewhere along those lines, and I think it got taken down before the power of sense could come into play. So Detective Alanay coming in clutch here so far. I don't know how they managed to do it. I might have to rewatch this later for myself to figure out. But what looks like a misplay of positioning was actually brilliance. I'm sorry I've ever doubted you. That's going to knock Frodo now into the hot seat for sure. 7 health is not much to deal with. And unfortunately here for Naraba, if he does end up winning this one, this is, of course, a team kill. Hate to knock your mate out in 8th, but I mean, it's right there. But we've seen Frodo's bear has been able to do work. Don't sleep on that Arctase either. It does have a couple of items to get the job done, but with that loaded up ramp fire, we know this could end in a blink of an eye. That ramp fire looks like it's going to be diving directly onto that Quinks into the corner. Both teams going to be firing off the Quinkses. And both Quinkses are immediately going to get dove on, but actually the one on the side of Naraba looks like it's just fine until the ace comes through. Here comes the the ramp fight, and it absolutely takes out 2. But a couple more bodies are falling one more time to the skies here for the ramp fight. Some decent damage, but the bear just shrugs it off. That untargetable, though, is going to come in clutch. How many does he get this time? It's going to be 2. The bear's still alive, still swinging, does have some backup. AC 130 diving on through for a little extra support. And one more time to the skies here, and it finds 2. It is a 3-on-1. Can the polar bear go through 3? This is a tall task, but it's hanging on. But can it survive the burst damage? No, it will not be able to do so. Heartbreaker here from Team OLA, but that is going to be Frodo. Knocked out here in 8th. 07's in chat, because nonetheless, making it into this grand final in its own right is still a fantastic achievement. So, GG's, Frodo. We'll see you in the next one, though, I am sure. Just wasn't in the cards. That polar bear did a fantastic job, but could not withstand the burst damage of one more ramp fight all. But one thing that's rather interesting here in this game is there is actually a lot of low health bars. Normally we see maybe 2 or 3 players like sitting pretty, but right now the only one I would say is sitting pretty is Detective Alanay. There was 64. Everybody else has to actually be kind of careful. 7 empaths, 2 mystics, still the plan here for Detective Alanay. Newstology, Fighters and Templars. Scion Invoker coming out here now here for Zico Perico. Does have the Octius alongside the Dwelf or the Sylph. One of the two. The Archie line nonetheless. Fighters and Templars coming out here for Yami Yugi. Naraba still has Empath Revenant. A little extra Scion as well mixed in. Winnie Monarch. Nature, Bulwark, Fighter, Wildfire. A little extra Templars on this side here for a little bit of point blank fighting action. Meanwhile, Earth Magma Bulwarks for the side of Squawk. I'll say there's not necessarily much in terms of duplicates, so it's nice to see a rather diverse composition here in our grand final. What do you mean 4 or 5 players aren't diving for Rogues and Revenants? It's a nice change. I'm a noob. Yeah, compared to some of these players, 100% I am still a noob. Now this is weird. Neriba's tag is grayed out. As if they are out of the game, so that's kind of awkward. Hopefully they can reconnect. It's way too late to call for a remake, of course, so hopefully they can get themselves back in here. But we've got Squawk versus Zico Perico. Squawk and Hot Seat, as we do see the massive amounts of Scions, including that fully evolved Squeeze. This thing is going to chunk. But there are a lot of tanky bodies here on the side of Squawk with the goal line. Oh my goodness, that shot from the Alfie directly through pretty much the entire front line. An absolute dream shot here for Zico Perico. And the Fleesh even getting involved. And that is going to be the elimination here for Squawk. Going to end up falling in 7th unless Winnie Monarch ends up falling as well. And if so, how bad? Right along here with Detective Alanay, who knocks Yami Yugi down to 7. And Winnie won that round, so they're still in this one. Neriba did end up losing, so heartbreaking. Seems like disconnected. From what I'm seeing in the Discord, it's saying no internet, so that is absolutely brutal. I know they were streaming their point of view as well, so heartbreaking all around here for OLA's Neriba, and heartbreaking as a whole here for OLA. Is it raining out my way? It's kind of dark. I can't really see very well right now, but I know it was on the forecast. As we take a look at our next one here, Bulwark's Templar Fighter. That is a scary squad coming out here for Winnie, going up against Yami Yugi, Fighters, Templars, Bulwarks as well. So I mean, hey, this one's going to be a slobber knocker, and it looks like both teams are relying heavily on that Forest. That's of course the middle evolution to be their big damage dealers. Granted, for the side of Yami Yugi, they do have that Fur Knight loaded up with items as well. A little bit of a safety net there at the item for the Untargetable. We got the Foe Battle down in the bottom, but it has been ignited by the Wildfire from Winnie. And it looks like most of the team right now has been ignited. But at the same time now, same thing here with Yami Yugi has been ignited. It's going to be all reliant on the back line. The Adordo in the back, trying to keep the back line alive. 2 on 3, but the one side has heals. Winnie might be out of this one unless they can find themselves a miracle. I don't think they're going to be able to do so. One more tornado comes flying on through. The Ranger gets taken down, and Winnie barely is going to be out-sustained and get taken out here. This confirms the exit here for Neriba, going to get eliminated in 6th. Winnie in 5th. Fantastic run to both of them nonetheless. But we have ourselves our top half. Top 4 remain. Detective Alanay versus Yami Yugi. With Winnie getting knocked out, I wonder if that's going to trigger Yami Yugi to start searching for maybe some more wildfires, or if they've already used their credits up. I don't see anything really being added to the bench. Meanwhile, here for Detective Alanay, that's no longer the Vermilio, that's the Vermiliere. This thing is an absolute menace, and it is going to find that forest extremely quickly alongside the help of the Revo. Meanwhile, that poor Kuka in the front line here for Detective Alanay nearly gets taken down. That heal coming out here from the Zephyrlynx is coming in clutch. One more time coming out here from the Vermiliere directly into 2. Didn't chuck them down too bad, but does blind them, does slow them, and just stalls this out so badly. Can that Adordo keep everybody topped off though? Tiny little heal going on over to that forest. Going to keep it in there for a little bit longer, but that stun directly on top of it, while the Goliath keeps everything else in check, is looking good here. That forest should have been dead like 3 times, but it is still living. It doesn't have its healer anymore. It's been actually, wait, no, they're on the other side actually, and the numbers game is going to be too much. Detective Alanay is going to be out-sustained. Yami Yugi taking that one. That forest would not say die, constantly being topped off by its partner. Was awesome to see, and once again, the Exalted Fleece is here alongside the Ophisto. That's the one that I keep forgetting the name of. And this thing is loaded. So much Omega power on that Ophisto. It is going to one-shot things if it is left unchecked. However, on the other side, there is the Vermilier that could possibly find its way on over. Where did the Ophisto go? It's all the way off to the left-hand side. That Vermilier is going to go after the Fleece, who's going to end up targeting down the Ranger, which is A-OK. But meanwhile, that Alfie on the side of Zico Perico takes care of the Mammoth. No Illuvials will be yeeted on that side, but a big stun to the front line here. But guess what? Zico Perico has one as well. Big water blast going right towards the healers, and that is leaving things nice and juicy there for the Ophisto to make it rain and just clean up house here. Taking a quick look here, Yami Yugi still hanging in there. Was able to take care of iNostology, who's leading this lobby with 20. But the scary thing this time is that everybody's in the hot seat. Nobody is sitting pretty. We could very well be put down to our final two in a moment's time. Cyvoker coming out here for Zico Perico. Detective Alan A still hanging on in here. Those fighters and Templars are really starting to come around here for Yami Yugi and iNostology. Very, very balanced composition once again here. Templars, fighters, empaths, bulwarks. They are getting the job done with plenty of natures. Has the Spore affinity, which we honestly don't really see that much in use here as well. Yami Yugi, of course, yes, the king of games. We'll have to see. Do they end up winning the entire thing, or they get sent to the Shadow Realm? We'll have to see. I know I've definitely made that joke before in a prior cast. It just kind of writes itself. But of course, this is just an NPC round, so I was having a little bit of fun with the camera this time. Point blank, what does it look like when a crunk is running after you? Here's, of course, the squad for your leader. Lots of items being placed down onto that Fernite. iNostology up against Detective Alan A. Zico Perico going up against Yami Yugi. This one is going to be weird no matter what. We are going to see an elimination here, or two at that. Fighters and bulwarks on the right-hand side here for Yami Yugi up against the Scion Invokers. The Psynami combination coming out as well. You hardly ever see this. But whatever ends up actually being Tsunami is going to find that mana regeneration so quickly. We'll have to see how this one ends up going down. The Ranger's going to be one of them. Scarebox going to get taken down quickly. The Fleece alongside the Alfie going to tear on through. They got to watch out for that Umbre and the back line going up against the tank. Big ability coming on through. Takes down so many. And that's exactly what Zico Perico was looking for. The burst damage, nice and quick, is going to seal the deal. Let's go to our next one. iNostology and Detective Alan A. Rather even battle, but look at that Blazonite. Absolute super chicken firing on through. With attack speed out of this world. iNostology going to win that one. Zico Perico now. And iNostology for the grand final. Zico Perico going to be picking up the Vermilia that does have that bonus fighter imprint, which granted at the very least you do take it away from iNostology, but that plus 10 attack speed is always valuable regardless of which unit you put it onto. As we hop on into it, I think one way or another this will be our final battle. Do we see Zico Perico take their second Dreamers Esports Tournament in a row here, or do we see Nostology take their first one here, at least on stream? Templars, Fighters, Empaths, Bulwarks, you name it. Nostology has it. Meanwhile, Zico Perico, they're going to want this one done, and done quickly. With the burst damage from this Scion Invoker combo, can they burst through that fully loaded Blotto and get to that Blazonite in the background? We know that Umber is going directly towards it, right on top of the healer. Where are the beams? Here they come directly through. They do manage to take out the healer, but the tank line is fine. The forest is fine. They've tanked this for the most part. Now they're on top of the mages, and I think the goose is cooked here for Zico Perico, and Nostology shall be our winner here in this DayDream Tournament for Illuvium Arena. And that's the scary part about playing Scions and Invokers, because that little downtime between your Omega abilities is the exact opportune time that you get destroyed. Congratulations here to Nostology being able to capitalize and take the win here. And my cat will not shut up. I don't know if they're hyped or scared of the storm. Here, you might have been onto something. Maybe there is a storm outside, making it all scared. But of course, Templar Fighter Empath Bulwark was your winner here. The 7 Empaths and Mystics from Detective LNA did well, but not quite enough here. Yamayuki with the 5 Fighters, 4 Templars, 3 Bulwarks with the Wildfire style did well, could not quite make it though. Same idea here for Winnie Monarch, 5 Bulwark, 4 Templar. Naraba, unfortunate that they had the disconnect. They were doing pretty decently, but unfortunately did end up falling from that disconnect. Hate to see it, but it happens to the best of us. Squawk from Team Monarch went for the Magma style. Full Bulwark with Colossus. That was a tanky squad, but could not quite find the damage necessary. And wrapping up the field, Holy Frodo with the Empaths and Scions. Ugh. Definitely frustrating that my cat was meowing through that whole thing. And knowing my luck, it probably came on through the entire time. But I thank everybody for sticking around nonetheless. It was a lightning show on your way home, eh? Okay. Nope, that was it. Was not a game freeze, and what cat? Okay. I don't know if you're trolling me or not, but hey, if it's not coming on through, then perfect. I know my next goal for stream graphics, want to get a couple new backgrounds. I know my last couple have been a little pixelated, so I gotta get that dealt with. But of course I am no graphic designer, so I'm trying my best here. First thing, I want to make a starting soon screen as well. Didn't hear it. Alright, cool. Well, I'm glad. Now, of course, since I yapped so long in regards to the tier list for the Illuvials, we're pretty much at time now, but there's still one more thing that I do want to briefly touch on. And this one leans over for the collegiate esports side of things. So, it was a pretty crazy announcement that did just come out from NACE. So, it's basically the collegiate league that I hold with to a high regard, to say the least. I wouldn't necessarily the highest regard, because I don't want to compare leagues to that extent, but they're definitely one of the top ones. And I found it kind of crazy that they've opted to completely remove prizing for their league. So, oddly enough, again, for schools that want to compete in NACE, here, let me turn this a little bit lower. So for schools that want to compete in NACE, they have to pay a membership fee, and the players no longer even get prizing. It's just strictly a trophy, a medal, a good job, and with the school's name on it. And it's like, I understand that's how it is for traditional esports, but here's the thing. For traditional esports, if I was playing in if my school was in Quebec, for example, and I run a hockey team, I can't reasonably go have my Quebec hockey team go sign up for a Manitoba Hockey League. So whatever league that I'm closest to is going to end up being the one that I have to use. So I understand, like, say traditional sports doesn't have like cash prizing, like, okay, sure, that's totally fine. Problem here with esports is that prizing has always been like the staple for all prizing. There is no single league out there right now that has high enough reputation that just having the trophy for that league means a lot. So seeing NACE try this is really, really weird, and I know a lot of the people that I've dealt with in the past do have the mindset that there should not be any prizing in collegiate. And to a certain extent, even I'll agree that eventually there should be a time where there's probably like one big league, and just winning that championship means the world. But we are nowhere near that spot right now. So I've been seeing a lot of talk about that. I just found it kind of crazy, to say the least. Definitely something I wanted to get off my chest before hopping on forward with it. So random. And that's exactly it too, right? Like, what incentive, even if NACE was the best league hands down in collegiate, what incentive is there to actually join, to pay the membership fee, and to compete now? Their argument was that the prizing went to the same 3 schools, and they want to use that budget elsewhere. And to a certain extent, I get that. Like, let's be honest, it was probably going to Northwood, it was going to St. Clair College, and it was going to Maryville. I get that, but part of me has a little bit of a tinfoil hat theory here. Because when I was working at the old guild, of course, right? All I heard about was about cost cutting. And I've been seeing all around the place that, like, yes, we want to have a broadcast. However, the broadcast doesn't have a direct revenue for the program, so we opt against it. Heck, even NACE themselves, as a part of their membership package, had a live stream for their regular season games as a part of their membership. And even they canceled it. And like, my tinfoil hat theory here, like, I'm just quickly reading chat. Schools who don't. It relies on other programs and tuition. Yeah, so like, players in this instance now, if players are going into collegiate esports, I would genuinely have that serious talk with your recruiter or with your director as to what leagues you're going into. Because yes, what NACE is trying to do for like long-term sustainability does make sense, and they may outlast the rest of these leagues so that they eventually kind of win by default. But the thing is the players right now, like, they all are all in on this. Like, all know that if this is the way they're going, avoid it and look for the short-term gains or short-term gains in another league. Because right now, with esports as a whole, it seems to be having a hard time, right? There's nothing right now about esports that screams sustainable long term. And I get that NACE is trying to be different, but the community's gonna hate them. Who isn't gonna hate them, though, are all of these people out there looking to secure themselves long-term sustainable positions at schools. They're the ones that would want this in this instance here. And based off of what I'm seeing here, and I posted it on my other Twitter as well, I haven't checked it because I went live as I posted it, but my quote-unquote tinfoil hat theory, basically, so if NACE has had about a prize pool budget of about 50,000, that is about same amount of money and then some for a full-time staff member to like work around the clock for esports. And it is, of course, like I was kind of saying earlier before I kind of cut myself off, to hire a full-time broadcaster, for example, right now, when all I've been hearing about across the entire industry is that we're cutting costs, we're trying to keep things minimal, it doesn't make sense. Unless, you know, you are getting a direct return on your investment, so to speak. So here's what I'm guessing. So if a certain, like I had seen a post on the Saints Gaming Twitter, so of course this is the one for St. Clair College, that they had hired a new broadcast manager. And of course, nothing against the individual. They are a fantastic broadcaster in their own right. But from everything that I was hearing from that area, it was that they were cutting costs, cutting costs, cutting costs. To hire a broadcast manager would then, in theory, be stupid. You would just want to do what you always do and just kind of shove that off to just a motivated student and then try to milk them until they burn out. Again, unless you are guaranteed a return on investment. So my tinfoil hat theory here is that NACE right now are failing at trying to provide enough value for sponsors. And a big part of that is since they don't stream during the regular season, they only have streamed their broadcasts, they've only streamed their grand finals at the very, very end of the season by just outsourcing it to whatever school they happen to be hosting their grand finals at. And to say that the quality has been lackluster for the most part 9 times out of 10 would be me putting it nicely. You can tell that most of the time it is an afterthought. So here is my prediction. Obviously, prizing being cut is a shot at the community. And what I think is going to happen next after this announcement from NACE is that they're going to make an announcement that they're going to have all-season broadcasting. The community is going to be upset that there's no prizing. This is going to be their way of trying to see is, hey, we want the community to love NACE too, and so we brought the broadcast on, you know, just for the community. This broadcast is for the community, but let's be honest, all this is an outlet to try and add value for their sponsorships. So then what about this cut prize money? This cut prize money, of course, should in theory be enough to fund the NACE broadcast. But of course, NACE don't know how to actually stream themselves. They barely know how to do social media by themselves, let alone do something live on a broadcast. So my prediction is that going into this year, not only is it going to be a broadcast done by NACE, but I'm guaranteeing you that St. Clair College hired a new broadcast manager because they know that they are getting the broadcasting rights for NACE. They are going to do the NACE stream. This is just a guess, but this is the only thing that makes any sense given how much I've heard from just the community as a whole about cost cutting. Like, not just St. Clair, but college esports in general, that it's all about cost cutting. I believe that the work study, or that this isn't a work study position anymore. They added a new full-time member because I believe that St. Clair College is going to be streaming NACE. Which I then also think that there is a very, very good chance that St. Clair College hosts the grand finals for NACE this year to kind of coincide with that broadcasting deal. My additional thoughts behind it is because, of course, they knew the person that they wanted to hire. They were very, very gung-ho with them. And of course, two of these managers for St. Clair College also happen to be on boards or in leadership positions at NACE. And then I also don't blame St. Clair, because like I said before, they're one of the 3 teams that usually got bank from the prize money. So why would the St. Clair College leadership want to give up on almost guaranteed NACE prize money unless they were getting something else in return, and they have people in the right position to do it? So, that's my thoughts on it. That it's just going to end up being a case of hurting the community to then make it seem like you're doing them a favor, when in all reality, that money could be just going right into the same place anyway, but guaranteed. And this isn't meant to be a shot towards the broadcaster at St. Clair, because 100% they're qualified by all means to do so. I'd argue they're even better than me. 100%. But that's my prediction. Again, it's just a prediction, it's just a guess. I've not seen anything, I've not gotten some sort of insider baseball telling me that this is the case. But on the premises alone that NACE is struggling to provide value for sponsors, and that big reason for that is the fact that they have no stream, the pieces just kind of line up. So that's my guess. Ugh. Well, with that being said, it is getting late. I will be calling it a night very, very shortly. Put my tinfoil hat away. That was quite the rant. I unfortunately cannot repeat it all, but I guess to just kind of keep a long story short here for you. My prediction, of course, was that currently, as it stood right now, that you are trolling me, I swear to God. Ah! Okay, you got me. But yeah, that's where I stand right now on it. It's something I'll be keeping an eye on. Could very well be a changing of the guard. Yeah, forgive me, it's 2025, and people are still using Kappa in the chat. It's been a little while, to say the least. But yes, of course. But there is a very, very good chance here with this change here from Nace that there would be a very short-term changing of the guard of, I guess, who or which league people see as the best. I imagine that a lot of these top teams are going to fight their management in order to play in other leagues that actually have prizing. But give it like 5-10 years down the road, when a lot of these leagues just burn out or go under, Nace will still be the last one standing. And then we'll have to see where it goes from there. But with that being said, any further and I'm just rambling, so I'm going to call it a night. Thank you all for tuning in. Gear, thank you for chatting up as much as possible as well. Thank you. And trolling me as per usual. Have a great night, and I'll see you on Friday.